Okay, this is 20 minutes to 1 local time in London on Sunday, the 21st of March 2021. And it's 12:40 hours GMT on the same date, Sunday, 21st of March 2021. So we're going to look at and diagnose the Sunday papers, starting with the Sunday Times. Now, this may sound like a kind of obscure item, but it is not. It is actually an admission by the Sunday Times of the depth of corruption in the UK House of Peers, that is the so-called upper house in the UK Parliament. And the upper house in the UK Parliament is, in that particular piece, is overpopulated by too many absolute, redundant, crooked, dishonest individuals. So it said the truth about the peers who are born to rule. Now that is a contradictory kind of statement. They are not born to rule at all. Nobody is born to rule. These are people that are allowed to rule. So that is the difference. And what they're saying in the Sunday Times today is that 47 million pounds is the sum that these people claimed in expenses since 2001. Now that's the figure, 47 million. Now what does expenses mean? Expenses in this context means that these individuals, if they just visit the House of Peers during the day, during the week, and spend about 1 minute or 2 minutes in their office and then leave, then they can claim, and they do claim, 370 pounds plus, in expenses. That's it. Now, 370 pounds is more than the weekly salaries of many people, or weekly wages earned by people who work 8 hours a day or more. So it's grotesque, and it is completely a criminal institution and criminal organization. And the fact that these people are still there in that position, those are some of the pictures of these so-called life peers. This also shows the state in which the parliamentary opposition, fronted now by Keir Starmer, that is the kind of state of death, political death of the opposition. And there is nothing in between. That is to say, there is no politically active party or group or movement in the UK that actually is talking about this and demanding the scrapping, ending of this corrupt system. We refer to the comment by this woman who is the comment editor, the Daily Borisgraph, who is, of course, a racist, and she used a contemptible phrase, benefit street entitlement. against Shamima Begum yesterday in the Telegraph, Boris Graph. Now, benefit street entitlement is a absolutely contradictory statement, because the UK's welfare system is absolutely biased, built-in biased against the most poor and the poorest and the most vulnerable, who on the paper supposedly being helped by benefits. And benefit street is an anti-welfare, anti-societal, anti-social phrase created by those individuals whose natural propensities take them to the farthest of the right-wing politics in this country, and they deny all civil rights, all civil says. They deny it to the people who are pushed into poverty and deprivation. Now, as I said before, not in this particular edition, but I said in the past that the novelist Frederick Forsyth was an odd kind of person to comment on Shamima Begum in any sympathetic way, which he has done. Even though he has been sympathetic in parts of his comments, even he, Frederick Forsyth, has not been able to express any sympathy for Shamima Begum as a human being without his expression being contaminated by his prejudice against what he wrongly thinks about the whole borough of Tower Hamlets and the particular part of Tower Hamlets, the Bethnal Green area, where he refers to Shamima Begum as coming from. And there is this perception that people being denied their rights are at fault. And that's a duplicitous and corrupt, and in this context, classist and racist and anti-Muslim kind of bias against these girls, Shamima Begum and the other three, all from Tower Hamlets, and all denied the basic entitlements, the basic legal entitlements to be protected by the Tower Hamlets Council under the safeguarding the children duties. So this Boris Graph comments editor, condemns Shamima Begum by saying that Shamima Begum was exhibiting benefit street entitlement. And then in the same piece, this very prejudiced and ignorant person compares Shamima Begum as indulging in Cosmo, that is Cosmopolitan magazine, which is the trendies magazine when it was the print age for magazines. Cosmo kind of trend or trendiness or similar kind of propensities that Shamima Begum is not kind of entitled to. And this is the state in which the House of Peers are getting money, £370 plus, for just turning up. They don't have to do anything. They just turn up into the building, what is otherwise known as the Palace of Westminster, and walk to their kind of office, so-called, and then file the kind of allowances claim they make about every visit they make to the House of Peers. So I'm going to check what they're saying in the So what we are looking at or looking for is taking a bit of searching. So we talk about the House of Peers. Let's look at the House of Peers. And we talk about the benefit street entitlement and all of those one after the other in the course of this diagnosis. We shall return to the now there is this column on the Times by a woman called, let's see what her name is, checking again for her full name. Okay, she's Camilla Long. Now Camilla Long is one of the most racist and hateful anti-Muslim inciter of hatred that has got a column on the Rupert Murdoch Times newspaper group. And she's written one piece against Shamima Begum in the Sunday Times, which we shall be reading from. And so this is the Sunday Times on Sunday, a white woman writing against Shamima Begum, and the Daily Borisgraph on Saturday, a white woman writing against Shamima Begum. And this is absolutely kind of reliable pattern. It's not exceptional, and it's not the rare kind of type of racist incitement and hatred and anti-Muslim spiel or spin. This is the norm. So absolutely anyone who is concerned about the treatment of women and girls generally, who would think that the treatment of all girls, all women would be equal, especially in the wake of the outcry correctly raised and seen because of the police attack on the peaceful vigil and mourners after Sarah Everard was kidnapped, most possibly raped, and murdered by the Metropolitan Policeman Wayne Couzens. But that assumption, the expectation, which is justified if the universal values are recognized equally. That is not actually the reality. Whenever it comes to the likes of any black woman or African origin woman or Asian origin woman, the racist women in public positions like Camilla Long as a columnist for the Murdoch Times Group, or this so-called comments editor at the Boris Graph, they would find any excuse to damn, undermine, berate the otherwise genuinely, ethically, and morally entitled victims of prejudice and discrimination. I mean, Meghan Markle was born in America to a white father and an African origin mother. And she was a naturally born American citizen. And she married a naturally born British citizen in the form of Harry. So nothing extraordinary, nothing unknown. That is a known kind of set of situations. People from mixed race backgrounds, people from different ethnic background, ethnicities do get married. And by doing the marriage and getting married, they don't commit any physical or biological or other wrongs that then renders them less equal than they were before the marriage. And yet, they are being treated as if they've lost their rights, not added to their rights by that act or those acts of marriage, which is how Camilla Long treated Meghan Markle when she joined the racist war of propaganda and misinformation against Meghan Markle. Now, this week, Camilla Long is engaged in attacking Shamima Begum, even when she's pretending to be sympathetic to the idea that Shamima Begum, now reportedly begging forgiveness from those people in Britain who have, according to her, misunderstood her or have been kind of outraged by her alleged involvement with the group in Syria. While Camilla Long is appearing to be logically, evidentially kind of sympathetic to anyone who is seeking forgiveness for their past mistakes or errors. While she's saying this, Camilla Long, that people do commit mistakes and if they seek forgiveness, then they should be forgiven. When she's saying that, she's also describing Shamima Begum as unlikable. How does she know about Shamima Begum being unlikable? I mean, Shamima Begum has only been in the news. Camilla Long has never met her and is unlikely to meet her ever, or meet anyone like Shamima Begum in terms of the background, in terms of the ethnicity and kind of social background, whatever she thinks Shamima Begum's social background is. So how does she know that Shamima Begum is unlikable? How? On what facts? On what evidence? Except that Camilla Long is part of the racist propaganda machine, brainwashing machine, that are paid to spread racist anti-Muslim hatred. I mean, any Muslim young person, like the age group that Shamima Begum is in and her friends were and would be if they were alive, Camilla Long would have similar hostile attitude against them because of their ethnicity, nationality, in the sense of background, not nationality in the sense of their individual citizenship. Now, as I said, two white women this weekend are undermining a young Bangladeshi origin, British born, British citizen person born in London and painted as having lost her rights, human rights, by having her identity, that she actually clings to the nationality identity, the cultural identity in terms of birth, in terms of her background. What evidence has Camilla Long got against Shamima Begum? Well, I'm looking for all those items of evidence for reference. I shall go to the article itself and see what Camilla Long is saying against Shamima Begum. Now, the Sunday Times, being the property or being owned by Murdoch, Rupert Murdoch, the dirty digger, is the kind of Fleet Street vehicle, or let's call it a ship, which carries the largest number of passengers who are being paid by the owner of the ship for spewing hatred and racist lies against targets that are not given the platform to reply. So we are doing this reply on behalf of, in this case, Shamima Begum and her 3 school friends. We shall find this Camilla Long piece and we shall read it when I find it. And what she's saying is that Shamima Begum is dislikable. It's not a neutral, objective article. It's a piece of hatred that Camilla Long is spewing against this victim. And we shall come to the itemized description of what we mean by victim. Because according to news that we have discovered in the last 24 hours, it's not really news, it's an online kind of entry about one of these 4 girls And we can call them 4 instead of 3 because in the last 24 hours, we have actually definitely come across the name identity of this 4th girl that we couldn't definitively refer to prior to the last 24 hours. And this girl is called Sharmina Begum. And it is an entry on Wikipedia that contains the information that we are referring to and paraphrasing. Now, Sharmina Begum has got the same last name, Begum. Now, Begum is a very common last name among women in Bangladesh, very much in many parts of India, and of course in Pakistan is a Muslim woman's last name. That is a standard Muslim woman's last name. And the opposite to that is the Muslim man's first name is Muhammad. However, the various people happen to spell it. My spelling is the nearest to the Arabic phonetics because it's an Arabic name. And so the Muslim man's name is Muhammad, the first name, and the woman's name or women's last name is Begum. It's a common name, very highly frequent name. Begum and Khatun is the other one. And so the Wikipedia entry editors or whoever was checking the entry, they said that Begum is not related to Shamima Begum. That's the thing, because they think that Begum, the last name shared by the two, would indicate that they were related like sisters or cousins or whatever. They are not. They are friends, but they are not blood related in the proximity of blood relationship. And the details that are contained in the entry, in the Wikipedia entry on Sharmina Begum, have changed the structure of the narrative that we were kind of assuming up till the last 24 hours when we came across that entry. And that entry actually identifies elements and factors based physically in Tower Hamlets that, according to that entry, brainwashed this Sharmina Begum. Now, this is not just Sharmina Begum that was brainwashed, because in the entry in the Wikipedia online website says that when the other 3, that is Shamima Begum and the other 2, arrived in Syria within 2 months of Sharmina Begum having done that, they got together. The 4 of them got together. Now that means that if Sharmina Begum had been brainwashed, then the other 3 might have been brainwashed as well, because they reportedly they are friends, all of them. So if the first friend was brainwashed, say first, or the first friend went to Syria after being brainwashed and groomed, then it follows that the other 3, if not brainwashed exactly in the same way as the Sharmina Begum brainwashing, but the other 3 were brainwashed to a different extent, and by being kind of targeted and groomed by them being related to emotional kind of factors that would have been very effectively employable in their being groomed and brainwashed, whatever those elements were. And there is a chink of a kind of sight into why Shamima Begum, in particular, went to Syria. According to a report published in various outlets during the last 78 hours. And those reports are actually versions of the account that is contained in a documentary that is due to be broadcast or published later this year. But the documentary apparently has been produced and edited by a Spanish woman. I hope anyone watching this is following this so far. So what happened when Sharmina Begum was brainwashed and was told that her mother, who had died of cancer in January, I think, 2014, effectively was waiting in heaven to meet her, Sharmina. And the two would meet in heaven if Sharmina Begum became a martyr, that is to say, if she was able to get killed. In Syria, or in a confrontation that could be described as her being engaged in holy war, and she got murdered or killed. And her groomer said, according to the entry in Wikipedia, that if she got murdered or martyred in that way, then the road to meeting her mom was very clear. She would meet her mom as a martyr if she died as a martyr. So two and two put together. If she die, if she wants to meet her mom, she has to get killed. But she has to get killed in a holy war, or in a mode as a holy war fighter. And the nearest events, the nearest gig, forgive the expression, nearest gig, this was a teenager being groomed. So the exciting language must have been used. So the nearest gig was happening only 500 pounds airfare away in Syria. So if she went to Syria and got martyred, then she would be meeting her mom. And all of that suggests that this child was absolutely distraught at losing her mom. And whoever groomed her did the grooming by taking maximum advantage of her being distraught and overcome with sadness and the sense of loss of her mom. Now, this child was similarly targeted to the other three children. It's absolutely without any doubt that all four of them were targeted and so-called kind of radicalized by same group of people, or a group of people or groups of people that knew each other. So we have compared the four girls not as being radicalized, that is the word we are not using. And we shall come to the explanation as to why we are using the other term. These girls were kidnapped from streets of, let's say, Tower Hamlets within 3 months. And the fact that these children were kidnapped, this conveys the kind of sense of direct physical disappearance more accurately than them going to Syria and doing all these complicated connections. What would happen in the local community if even one girl, 14 years old, was reported to have been kidnapped from the streets? There would be an almighty explosion of anger at what the authorities did to prevent this happening to any of the girls, let alone happening to as many as 4 of these girls. 4 children, all girls, got kidnapped from the streets of Tower Hamlets, starting in December 2014 and ending in February 2015. So that within 3 calendar months, 4 young girls, schoolgirls, were kidnapped from the streets of Tower Hamlets. What would be the questions? The questions would be, what did the police do? And the questions will continue. What did the local council do? Because the way the society is quote operated includes the assumption, the permanent assumption, and the permanent reliance on that assumption that the elected local council is responsible for safeguarding children, safeguarding people. That is absolutely part of the assumption. And it's an assumption that is relied on without any doubt, without any dispute whatsoever. So the question would have been, what did the council do to protect these children? Did Tower Hamlets Council do the necessary to protect these children? And if the answer is no, then has the Tower Hamlets Council done the necessary to rescue these girls when it has been known where to find them? And these questions will continue, and these diagnostic updating questions will continue. Now, back to Camilla Long in the Sunday Times. And as I said, her kind of piece is not directly starting with Shamima Begum, but she includes a reference to Shamima Begum, which is contradictory and is exposed as a racistly charged, hateful reference to Shamima Begum. So she's saying here, if a fashionista can't be forgiven the sins of her youth, there is no hope for an ISIS bride. Now, the community in Tower Hamlets has never had anything to do with these children being kidnapped, which is what we are describing that process as being. Because Sharmina Begum was encouraged to go and get martyred to meet her mom very fast in heaven. This Camilla Long, also a footnote about Camilla Long, who she is. She fancies herself as being much more suitable to become a wife to one of Diana's 2 sons. Especially, she thinks that she's 1,000 times more suitable than Meghan Markle is. That is the synthesis, that is the actual compression of the contents of everything she has written in the last year against Meghan Markle. Okay, so she's used to writing against black women or women of African origin. So Kamila Long is describing Shamima Begum in this way. She is a criminal, a liar, a traitor, a woman who looked at a pile of severed heads and said they didn't faze her. Stripped of her citizenship, she must spend her days mourning in a disease-ridden hellhole like trash. Then Kamila Long says that those words are not hers, those words are summaries of the view taken against Shamima Begum by many of the online commenters. This is print, so you cannot see the online in the print version. This is the main article, and she's referring to the comments underneath the online version of this article. And then she says, but aren't we better than this, even if she isn't? She says that those comments online against Shamima Begum are too cruel and too harsh and too lacking in compassion. And then she says, why should we have any problem with not having compassion for her? Because she isn't compassionate. So she is actually, on the one hand, pointing out the harsh comments against Shamima Begum made by, quote, other people, not her, because she is a special, exclusive royal bride waiting to be married after Meghan is got rid of by Harry. That kind of purity she assumes for herself. But she says, Shamima Begum isn't good. She doesn't deserve any of the sympathy. Even her gross husband, ISIS husband, may be allowed home to Holland. I mean, Shamima Begum is the butt of all the bitterness and all the bitter racist expressions. Now, Shamima Begum hasn't done anything that has been, even by the people who have removed her citizenship, considered criminal so that she could be charged with committing any crime and put on trial for the alleged crimes. She hasn't been. She has not been accused. She has not even been accused of having committed any crime. And if her reported expression that piled up beheaded bodies of victims of ISIS massacres, the sight of those didn't faze her. I mean, we are not agreeing with that attitude expressed by anyone, including by Shamima Begum, because we don't know whether she did or not. But if she did, we do not agree with that whatsoever. We are making an analytical, ethical, comparative analysis. But there are people in Britain, not even in jail, people even working on the Sunday Times, writing on the Sunday Times like Rod Liddell, who have expressed more cruel attitude about other people, much more cruel than Shamima Begum's alleged comment saying that she didn't feel fazed, or she wasn't fazed by the sight of a number of victims who had been murdered or killed. So there is no possibility, there is no room for any likely kind of forgiveness for Shamima Begum, even by Kamila Long, who claims that she is in favor of forgiving Shamima Begum, or at least notionally she thinks that Shamima Begum is entitled This is not the picture of Shamima Begum in the big picture. That's a picture of a former kind of teen something who is not being condemned by Camilla Long, but whose story is being, if you like, substantiated by Camilla Long, referring to Shamima Begum's kind of plea, as reported in the documentary yet to be shown, for forgiveness. So this is a piece that Camilla Long has written about this young person, Alexei McCammond. Now, McCammond is not an Asian name, not a Muslim name at all. So she's saying that if there is no forgiveness for someone like Alexei McCammond, or McCammond, whatever the pronunciation, then what hope is there for, say, the unlikable ISIS bride Shamima Begum, who has been begging her former fellow citizens to give her a second chance? So she's saying the unlikable ISIS bride. By that phrase, she completely condemns Shamima Begum and makes hating her and depriving her the most logical and rational thing to do. So it's a contradiction. It's a racist contradiction based on racist hatred of Shamima Begum and an anti-Muslim hatred of Shamima Begum. There is no Muslim in the book of the likes of Camilla Long. There is no Muslim woman in the book of the likes of, or the books of the likes of Camilla Long, who deserves to be given any dignified treatment, any benefit of the doubt, any opportunity to earn their forgiveness in the context of the behavior that has been ascribed to Shamima Begum. Because as we speak on this 22nd of March 2021, we still don't know. We have no clue as to the authenticity of any claims about Shamima Begum made in the so-called Fleet Street and other mainstream media in the West. Because Shamima Begum has not been actually confirming any of these things that have been said about her, or commenting in any detail about any of those. So that is the one condition that needs to be fulfilled to meet the requirements of objective evidence. Having said that, where we are referring to Sarah Everard is not from kind of in terms of ethnicity, in terms of general social kind of origins and background, she is not from the same or similar backgrounds that I am from. And I have never needed that. A victim of any crime, including the horrendous crimes that Sarah Everard has been victim of, that the victim should need to meet any requirements for me to have unconditional solidarity with them and the commitment for justice for them, even if they're not physically around. That is the attitude I take. If I didn't take the attitude, I would not be doing this broadcast. I would not be doing any of the campaigns that I do and I have done. Universality and equality and morality and ethics and justice, all these values that I uphold and I practice and I aspire to and I advocate, all these values are for a real life action. And that is what I'm doing. Sarah Everard is from one angle, one end, and Shamima Begum is from another end. And I put those together in the montage that you can see on the top right hand corner of the screen. Because the two of them, both of them, have been done injustices. And for the sake of them and for the sake of justice, we are going to campaign for both of them in all the relevant detailed different contexts and facts. Essentially, these two women, young women, have been violated and deprived and robbed of their rights. And in the case of Sarah Everard, robbed of their life. And in the case of Shamima Begum, she has been robbed of 3 children that she didn't plan to have, and she wasn't in an environment to look after properly. Now, the trauma of that is in itself absolutely indescribable, and she cannot ever forget the loss of these 3 children, the loss of any of them. Now, who put this child, Shamima Begum, in such a position? What did the Tar Armless Council do? We have been asking this ever since these children, Shamima Begum and the other 2, were reported in February 2015 to have crossed from Turkey into Syria in 2015. So 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 6 calendar years, we alone have been asking this question. And there has been no answer from Tar Armless Council, no answers on behalf of Tar Armless Council, no answer from the Metropolitan Police, no answer from the Home Office, and no answer from anyone else, including from any councillor in Tar Hamlets or any former councillor or former elected post holder in Tar Hamlets Council. No comment, so far as you can see, from the two elected MPs, whoever the MPs were or have been at the time throughout the last 6 calendar years. So we have been saying the Tar Armlets Council is the one that is at fault for letting down and betraying these children. We have said the actual word that these children have been kidnapped. Anyone watching this or anyone hearing this should ask themselves this question: would they remain indifferent? That is to say, would they ignore this call for justice for Shamima Begum and the other 3 girls in the context of Tar Armlets Council letting them be kidnapped and lost and exposed to the deadly war zone in Syria? If their child was known to have been kidnapped and had been reported to be living in the war zone in Syria, what would they do? If they knew that there was a legal reason, a legal connection for demanding action by Tar Armlets Council, would they not use that legal reason to rescue their child? So these are the questions we shall be continuing to ask and update on, and we shall be saying, if a council like Tower Hamlets allows the kidnap and disappearance of 4 girls, not 1 girl, 4 school girls, should that council be held to account? Or should that council be allowed to have a dictatorial elected mayor post? Because throughout the last 6 calendar years, there was that post, and the post was occupied by one person or another. And there has been no accountability by the holder of that post about the kidnap of these 4 girls and disappearance of these 4 girls. And we know at least 2 of the girls that went along with Shamima Begum have been reported have been killed in Syria. If anyone watching this, if your child, your daughter was kidnapped and then murdered in the way that we are putting in this commentary based on the paraphrasing on the actual facts, would you stay neutral and would you say that the Tower Hamlets Council should not be made to account for its wrongs and negligence? Or would you demand the Tower Hamlets Council be held to account? I mean, all possibilities, all likelihood is that you would not stay silent. You would want justice for your daughter. And we are asking for that. And the start of the justice campaign is to stop the elected mayor post for a start and vote no on the 6th of May 2021. So we shall be continuing this commentary and diagnosis in the next parts.